They say a lighthouse is a beacon of hope, but for Aether, it's a cage made of secrets. Welcome back to Fable's Adventures. Today's story, The Lighthouse Keeper's Burden, is for those who understand that the truth isn't always a gift. Sometimes, it's a sentence. We're diving into a world where silence is a choice, and reading a heart is more painful than reading a lie. If you're tired of stories that play it safe, stay with us. This is a sophisticated narrative about a choice that saves 1,000 lives, but costs the only one that mattered. Subscribe to join our community of listeners who crave stories with real stakes. Now, dim the lights. Let's head to the edge of the world.
The Lighthouse Keeper's Confession. You stand at the gallery rail, watching the gray eat the horizon. The sea below doesn't roar. It whispers, patient as a predator that knows it will win eventually. The lighthouse beam cuts through fog in its mechanical rhythm. Sweep, 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 like a pulse checking if anything is still alive out there. The stranger arrived 3 hours ago. Their ship went down in the dark, which is the only way ships ever go down near this place. You watched from the lamp room as the Coast Guard pulled them from the water, one body among the wreckage, gasping like a fish discovering it could breathe air. They brought the stranger here because the lighthouse is shelter, and you are, despite everything, shelter too. You descend the spiral staircase. Today it moves normally. The steps don't stretch or compress. Even the stone seems to hold its breath. In the keeper's cottage, the stranger sits wrapped in a wool blanket that's older than your loneliness. Their dark hair clings to their skull in wet ropes. They're trying not to shiver, which means they're trying not to appear weak, which means they're afraid. You know this the way you know everything, not from watching their hands or reading their lips, but from the sound underneath. You hear it, that frequency only you can perceive. The hum of their inner self, raw and unguarded as exposed nerve. I'm Aether, you say. Your voice comes out thin, like you've forgotten how to use it. Maybe you have. The lighthouse teaches silence. Kael, they say, and the name arrives wrapped in gratitude so genuine it makes your chest ache. I don't know how to thank you. If you hadn't seen, you raise your hand, not unkindly, just to stop the words before they calcify into permanent lies. You've learned that people thank you for things you haven't done yet. That night, you make soup. The ingredients are simple. There is nothing complicated about the life you've chosen. Root vegetables, bone broth that's been simmering for days, salt that tastes like tears because all salt does, eventually. Kael eats like someone who forgot they were starving. How long have you lived here? They ask, and you hear the secondary question beneath. Are you the kind of person who could understand isolation? Long enough, you answer. The lighthouse beam sweeps across the kitchen window, painting everything briefly gold before returning it to gray. Long enough to know that the sea gives up what it wants to. Kael's jaw tightens. You feel it, that tremor in the air around them, like a tuning fork struck just slightly off-key. The ship was carrying medical supplies, they tell you. The words are practiced, smooth as river stones. Bound for the settlements up the coast. We were caught in the storm and... But underneath the words, you hear the truth. It moves like oil through water. Dark, separating, wrong. You hear their fear, yes, but you also hear something else. Something buried so deep they've almost convinced themselves it isn't there. A secret they've wrapped in medical supplies and official manifests. A lie they've made so comfortable it feels like home. You set down your spoon. This is the part they don't tell you when they describe your gift as a blessing. They don't tell you about the moment when you realize that knowing the truth doesn't mean you have to speak it. That silence can be its own kind of violence. You should rest, you say instead. The guest room upstairs. There are dry clothes in the bureau. Kael nods, and relief floods through them. Genuine relief, because you haven't asked, haven't pushed, haven't shattered the careful architecture of their deception. Yet. After they climb the stairs, you sit in the dark kitchen and listen to the lighthouse beam. Sweep, sweep, sweep. The sound of a giant's eye, opening and closing, forever checking the horizon for signs of life. You think about protection, about how love is sometimes the cruelest cage. The next morning, Kael is different, rested, but also restless. They pace the gallery like something pacing the bars of an aquarium, looking out at the water that nearly killed them. The Coast Guard will come eventually, you say. You're standing at the rail beside them, not quite touching, to ask questions, to take statements. You feel Kael's entire body go rigid. When? The word comes out small, frightened. Soon, you say. They'll want to know what happened, who you are, why your ship was really out there. This is the moment. You can feel it. A precipice sharper than the one the lighthouse stands on. Kael is balanced on it, waiting for you to push or catch them. I have to tell you something, Kael whispers. Not to you, to themselves. Testing the words, seeing if they can survive being spoken aloud. You wait. This is what you've learned in the silence. People will confess if you simply make room for their confession. The supplies, Kael says. They weren't medical. They were... They pause. Gather themselves like someone preparing to jump. They were vaccines. Experimental ones. The settlements were supposed to get them, but there was a directive from the capital, an order to stop the shipment, to claim it was lost at sea. The words hang in the fog-thick air. Why, you ask, though you already know. You've heard it in the depths of their mind, the bureaucratic cruelty, the cost-benefit analysis, the decision that certain lives matter less than political expedience. Because the settlements are poor, Kael says bitterly. Because it's cheaper to let them get sick than to acknowledge they exist at all. And I was supposed to make sure it happened. I was supposed to ensure the shipment sank. I was supposed to... They stop. Breathe. The next words come out like swallowing glass. But I couldn't. When the storm hit, I cut the engines. I let the ship drift. I made it look like an accident, and Their voice breaks. I'm a coward. I didn't have the courage to openly defy them, so I sabotaged the mission in a way that looked like fate. And now, if anyone finds out, I'm complicit in mutiny, in treason maybe. And the vaccines are in the water, you finish. Kael nods. They're crying now, the tears mixing with spray from the waves below. They'll die, Kael says. The people in the settlements. Without the vaccines, they'll die. And I've destroyed the only chance they had. I've made myself a murderer, just in a way that lets me pretend it was an accident. You think about your gift, about the terrible clarity of reading a person's heart. Kael isn't lying now. You can hear the truth, raw, unvarnished, desperate. A person who tried to do something right and failed, then tried to hide the failure, and now sits with you at the edge of the world, confessing to sins they're not sure they've actually committed. The lighthouse beam sweeps across the gallery. There's a research vessel, you say quietly. They pass by here on Thursdays, mapping the deep channels. I know the captain. Kael looks at you. If you told them, you continue, about the vaccines, about the coordinates where the ship went down, about the order to suppress the shipment, they could retrieve them. They have equipment. They could save the settlements. I'd be arrested, Kael says. Probably. I'd be tried for treason. Yes, I might die for this. You turn to face them fully. You let them see your eyes, the eyes of someone who reads hearts the way other people read books, who knows the weight of every truth and every lie, who understands what it costs to stand for what's right. Yes, you say again, but the people in the settlements would live. Thursday comes gray and calm. The research vessel appears through the mist like a prayer answered. Kael stands on the gallery with you. They've made their choice, not because it's easy, but because it's right. You can feel it in them now. The fear is still there, sharp as broken glass. But underneath it, something harder, something that glints like light caught in a prism. Thank you, Kael says, for listening, for not making me choose alone. You chose alone, you tell them. I just held the space for it. The research vessel cuts its engines. A smaller boat lowers toward the rocks. Kael moves toward the stairs, then pauses. Will you be all right? They ask. Alone here? You think about that. About the way isolation has always been your shelter and your prison. About the weight of other people's secrets, the burden of knowing too much. About love, which is what it means to stand witness to someone's courage, even as they're taken away. No, you say honestly, but I'll be here. Kael nods. They understand what you mean. I'll be here, holding what you've left behind. I'll be here, proof that you were real, that you tried, that for a moment you were brave enough to break. You watch from the gallery as they board the smaller boat. You watch as they speak to the captain, pointing toward the coordinates, telling the story of a shipwreck that wasn't an accident. You watch as the research vessel's crew begins moving with purpose, preparing equipment, understanding the magnitude of what Kael has offered them. The lighthouse beam sweeps across them all. Sweep, sweep, sweep. The heartbeat of the world, checking if anything is still alive out there. Yes, you think. Yes, something is. You turn back inside and begin climbing the spiral staircase. Today the steps move normally, but you know that tomorrow, when the weight of Kael's absence settles on your shoulders, they'll stretch and twist and loop back on themselves. The lighthouse will remember their presence. The silence will feel heavier. But that's what protection means, you've learned. That's what love costs. It costs you the person you tried to save, and it saves everyone else. At the top of the stairs, in the lamp room, you sit and listen to the fog. The beam rotates around you, and for a moment, just a moment, you don't feel alone. You feel like a lighthouse should feel, like a purpose, like a beacon, like proof that even in the darkest water someone is still watching, someone is still standing, someone is still here.
Aether is still there, watching the horizon. And perhaps, in a way, we are all lighthouses for someone, standing witness to their hardest choices. If this story sparked something for you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Could you have kept Kael's secret? Or would the weight of those lives have been too much to carry? Let's talk about it in the comments below. If you have younger listeners at home, we have dedicated channels for kids and preteens that are just as immersive but tailored for their age. You can find links to our 5 to 8 and 9 to 12 channels in the description. And for those who want to build their own worlds, the Fables Adventures app is where these stories begin. You can download it at the link below to start creating your own sophisticated narratives today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. It's the best way to support the channel and ensure you never miss our daily adventures. Until tomorrow, stay watchful. The world needs your light.